Hello again, and welcome to the Detox. Thank you very much for joining me again this evening. Now, this evening we're kind of following on a little bit from last week's show, where I was talking about education and autism and how through the life experiences of an amazing woman called Temple Grandin and her insight, and through her insights that she brought to autism and education, we can see that every child would benefit from education that involves playing to their strengths and using that as a vehicle to expand on everything else. The autistic spectrum is so broad that I feel we all fit in some way, and I mean, you know, who doesn't have some kind of a special or particular way of doing something? I don't know, maybe your garden, or cleaning your car, or making your bed, or folding your clothes. We all have, you know, certain idiosyncrasies that we don't like it if someone touches our things in a certain way. It has to go like this, or I mean, maybe even not folding your clothes. Perhaps you lack the ability to keep your surroundings in any kind of order. So there are a myriad of ways of being that could be considered perhaps slightly autistic. But this is where our gifts or our strengths lie, I feel. I mean, people like David Beckham, I imagine most people know who David Beckham is, and I think we can all agree that he's not going to write a definitive book on mathematics, but he certainly knows how to play football, and he certainly has some amazing skills in that field. I don't know if any of you know or are aware of a woman called Sylvette David. She was she's still alive as far as I know. I think she lives around here actually, doesn't she? She's got a different name now, I believe. But she was an amazing artist, very talented young artist, but she lacked the ability to put herself forward in any way. And she became Picasso's muse and was known as the girl with the ponytail. But Picasso recognized her talent and helped her become brave and more forward in her work and her approach to her art and how to apply herself within the world. Now, the special interventions that are used to help kids, I feel, for autistic kids, I feel should be there for all children, because I think these are amazing ways to teach just generally. But the fact is that teachers are not really there to develop us. They don't have the time, and many of them don't even have the inclination to actually look at children as individuals and how to expand the child and develop critical thinking. Teachers have lists and boxes to tick, and they teach kids to jump through the hoops, and then they can tick the box and say they've succeeded and that the child has achieved. Is that education? Is that teaching? Is that teaching us to see the world with critical thinking and question accurately what's happening around us? I'm not so sure about that. So, as I discussed last week, there are many perspectives, and not everyone sees the world the way you do. Not everyone sees the world I do. And usually the people who have a slightly different take on the world are the ones who come up with the leaps in technology or development or in art or mathematics. Now, my guest this evening is someone who on September the 11th, 2001, saw something that others didn't see. She saw 2 buildings dissolving into dust. And my guest this evening is Dr. Judy Wood. Thank you very much, Dr. Judy, for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show.
Now, when you saw those buildings dissolving into dust, you were seeing something that most people weren't. Most people were watching the television and they were having a running commentary told to them, almost as if the story was being dictated, and the images were there just to confirm the story almost. But you had watched this in a different way. Perhaps you could just explain a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up, always having to do it my way, do things myself, and it had to make sense. I wasn't going to buy into anything anyone told me unless it made sense. And so when I approach problems, I tend to approach it by what do I see first, like in a school book. You look at the pictures, and then if the story doesn't make sense with the pictures, then you kind of wonder about it. Well, on the TV, here are these buildings turning into dust and, frothing up into dust, and they said it was collapsing. Well, that's ridiculous. So I just tuned out what they were saying because what they were saying was nonsense. Like it was a soundtrack that went with some other story, not what I was seeing. And I even stopped and kind of looked away and looked out into space, and imagined what would a collapsing building look like. Nope, didn't look like that. And I even, I remember one of the images that went through my mind was of an avalanche. How a little bit starts moving, then it gets another part moving, it gets another part moving. It doesn't 1, 2, 3, and it all moves. That doesn't make sense. And that was another thing. You'd expect to be kind of a leapfrog, and then also once it's done, it will be settling down. Like this settles and that settles, and things are going to keep moving. It's not going to, move and then abruptly just instantly stop. And so what they were saying didn't make sense, so I tuned it out. So I didn't hear it. When my eyes and ears don't agree, I turn off my ears. And I look with my eyes because I believe what my eyes are bringing to me. It doesn't need, to go through somebody else's interpretation.
That's a really interesting observation. Because there were 110 floors in those buildings, which I believe were something like a quarter of a mile high. We don't have buildings that high in this country. We have some tall skyscrapers, and even just a building of maybe 20 stories. But when a building is demolished or something, they make an awful lot of clatter and bang, and they take a while to come down. And I can't imagine a building of that size. I don't think anyone really, unless you're really there, and then just the trauma of it would be blowing your mind, could actually perceive what that would do. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it, really? 110 floors in less than 8 seconds. 110 floors. It just blows my mind to say it.
Think how many times you can clap your hands in 8 seconds.
Well, I could barely do it 8 times or 10 times in 8 seconds. I certainly couldn't do it 110 times.
One of the mental exercises I did was mentally turn the building sideways, and it's a little over a quarter mile long, and then you get the world's record holder for the mile, approximately 4-minute mile. So if he's going to run at that pace, a quarter of that's going to be 1 minute, right?
Yeah. So
here he is running along the distance of that building. I turned the building sideways in my mind because people don't run vertically; they run horizontally. And so here he is, trying to outrun this destruction wave, but no way. In 8 seconds, but it'll take him an entire minute, 60 seconds, to run the length of that building.
Yeah.
At the world record pace.
Yeah.
So it's mind-boggling how that could happen, and how things can fail, because you need one thing to fail that would then allow something else to fail, which would allow something else to fail. It would be this kind of leapfrog activity. It wouldn't be 1, 2, 3, and all fall down.
Yeah. I mean, it was just disappearing in front of us, wasn't it?
To me, my very first gut instinct was like somebody pulled the end of a yarn off of a sweater, just unraveled.
Yeah. But at the end of it, you didn't even have a ball of
yarn
left. There was some rubble, but there was barely anything really. Certainly wasn't 110 stories. And we know that it didn't go into the basement because you've shown evidence of people wandering around in the basement.
Oh, not only that, we have people in the stairwell B. 14 people survived there, and 2 survived from even above where the building survived. But just the stairwell, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor, you had 14 people in there. So if it got to the basement, how did it take a detour around these people?
Yeah.
And because these people looked up and saw blue sky. They didn't have a pile of beams sitting on top of them.
Yeah. Yeah, they opened the door and it was spooky. They just were...
Oh, no, they just looked up. After the dust cleared, they looked up and saw blue sky.
Bizarre. And also something as weighty as this 110-story building, supposedly it smashed into the ground, but that would have breached the sides of the basement, wouldn't it? Which were, I mean, they call it the bathtub, but it's actually the basement of the building that's built into the bedrock.
Right. So like a dike.
That keep out the Hudson River.
Yeah, it's like a dike.
Yeah.
That's built around there, and you would have at least ruptured it somewhere, and you'd spring a leak, and it would have flooded all of the underground of southern Manhattan, all the subway tunnels, because they all connect in there. But let me read what one of the survivors of Stairwell B said. After the dust cleared, he said, I looked and said, guys, there used to be 106 floors above us, and now I'm seeing sunshine. There's nothing above us. That big building doesn't exist. And then he later said, these were the biggest office buildings in the world, and I didn't see one desk, one chair, one phone, nothing. That was Jay Jonas. But they looked up and saw blue sky. Mm. Now, how are you going to be, having beams getting into the basement? Mm. How do they get around these people?
Yeah. I mean, it is just unbelievable when you think about it, that all the lift shafts, the equipment, the part of the lifts, the desks, the filing cabinets, the computers, the toilets, the sinks within the toilets, everything was just. The particles that were left. They were smaller. They were smaller than blood.
Right. They're about some were as small as 1/100th the size of red blood cells, which is the size of DNA. So how do you smash up something with a hammer and a rock?
Mm.
People say, well, that was the concrete. Well, how do you smash concrete to the size of DNA?
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Well, not just a small part of it, all of it. How did so much of it turn to the size of DNA particulates? That's just incredible.
I started out calling it pulverized, but then realized, that's when something grinds against something else and you end up with chunks.
Yeah.
This was a different process and it needed a new name, so I called it dustification.
Yeah. It was.
I think it's intuitively you know what that means.
Hmm. It was like it was constantly breaking down. It was becoming smaller and smaller and smaller and lighter and lighter.
And some of it actually went up.
Yeah.
How does that work? To the point that it blocked out all of the sunlight. Mm. It has to go up to. I've had detractors say, "Oh, she's saying nonsense that it went up." Well, then how do you get it so dark you can't see your hand in front of your face?
Yeah.
Because there's no sunlight whatsoever. It has to go up to block out that sunlight.
Mm. And I think a lot of it did. I mean, you could see in some of the aerial pictures of a huge trail of material, very fine material that is just drifting out.
Right. It went up. It sort of looks like asparagus spears, kind of sticking up out of the top.
Yeah.
When it goes, but you could see it like even the folks in the space shuttle, or on the space station.
Yeah.
They looked down and they could see the dust, the trail of dust going down the eastern seaboard.
Yep. Yep.
Which was interesting. They saw that, but they didn't comment on other things they saw.
We'll come on to that later. Now, I just want to mention also, before we move on, that your PhD dissertation involved the development of an experimental method of measuring thermal stresses.
Thermal strains in deformation, but you can calculate the stresses from the strains.
In bimaterial interface using moire interferometry. There we go. I managed to get that out.
That was very good.
Thank you. And I believe that this work that you did for your PhD, it actually blew away all other theories that had come before that time about these biomaterial interfaces.
Well, up to that point, it contradicted and proved wrong every analytical model that was out there, because they had viewed it as a two-dimensional problem, and it must be viewed as a three-dimensional problem, and the experimental evidence that I produced showed that.
Bless you, Steve. Sorry about that.
and so so it went against all of the analytical models, but empirical evidence and experimental evidence is the truth that theory must mimic, not the other way around. So
all theory, the 2D theories that they'd come up with,
it showed that they were wrong.
Yeah.
And they were predicting what the stresses should be, and it didn't agree with the experimental analysis. And which one is true? The experiment is always the correct one. As long as there's no error in there that's been introduced from my interpretation of it.
Right. So, as well, you have a bachelor's in civil engineering, yeah, and a master's in engineering mechanics. That's applied physics, and your PhD is in materials engineering science. That's quite a handful there. And does that? As a woman in your field, are you fairly unique in that? I don't know if there are many women actually within.
When I started, I was the only one, but that it never really fazed me, because I just always decided to do what I wanted to do. And in high school, I was a bike shop mechanic. There probably weren't too many women that did that either, but it's just what I've enjoyed doing. I really enjoyed physical hands-on things, because I could see cause and effect. I could prove something to myself or to someone else. There was a direct relationship with things.
Yeah. And
I really feel sorry for people now who, the kids' toys are these microchips. I can't see how they work.
I know. Years ago, we used to have toys that you could actually piece together and put together. We used to have something called Meccano in this country. I can remember my brother had a set, and they were very carefully machined pieces of metal that you could fit together with little screws and things. Did you have something like that?
Yes, I think we call them erector sets.
Right.
You could erect whatever you wanted to erect with them.
Yeah, you could make a building or, I don't know, a piece of...
You usually had a motor. It made it fun. You could have the motor move around and do stuff and make a long boom on it that, rotated, like planets moving. That's what we did with them, was make planets move around.
Yeah. Rotate around.
But my favorite toy, the first one I really had, it was a Chatty Cathy doll. Somebody had thrown it away, so heck, I couldn't make it any worse. It was already in the trash can. So I took it apart, and by golly, that thing had a record in it, like a record player. You pull a string, and it would wind up the spring where this little stylus. I put the stylus back on, and away it went. And that was just the coolest thing.
I know, that was always the best thing, actually, taking your toys apart, wasn't it? I can remember doing that as well with little, what are they? The little things that play tunes, a musical box. Gosh, why couldn't I get that out?
If only I could have gotten my hands on it. One of my friends had one of those, and I thought those were so cool.
Yeah, they were amazing, just to see where this music was coming from. Little teeny tiny, like barrel organ thing inside.
And then it would strum the tuning fork kind of things.
Yeah. So many toys of the past were very tactile. They were encouraging you to use your imagination and get your hands and skills involved. Even things like knitting and things like that, which were passed down to children from their parents. Things like that aren't really... skills like this aren't taught in school anymore, are they? Not to any.
No, or even cross-stitching and...
Yeah.
repairing things. But there really is a difference now, especially like in high school. It was still the old way that the kids who had cars were the kids who knew how to fix cars. And now you need, you have microchips again.
Yeah, you need a degree in IT to be able to put that machine in the car to see what's wrong with it.
And they used to do things like you replace the accelerator pedal with one that looked like a bare footprint. Yeah. And then they were cool,
Yeah.
but stuff like that doesn't get done so much anymore. Everything's kind of prefab, and it's not, just on an analog scale of what you can do with your toys. So it's really limits kind of thinking. And you're talking before about the variety of people. Yeah, people are better at different things, and I think that is the strength of our culture. Not everyone is good at multitasking.
Yeah, I do. I feel that is the strength of humanity, that we are all different. We all have different skills and needs, and I don't feel that education is really doing the job of bringing out those skills that we really need to help us just generally become rounded human beings that are going to bring amazing skills into the pot, to use and develop from. I feel that we're very much made to
all be the same, or to be measured on the same scale. Like if you can't do this, is what whoever can do X, Y, and Z the best is the best person. But that's just that scale. It turns out you end up graduating good test takers, not good engineers or other types of skills.
Yeah. I mean,
I've got a good story here that when I was at Clemson, there was a senior project I was supervising, and there was 4 students, 2 men and 2 women, and they had very different approaches, and they're about to kill each other. And it turns out they were going to be the strongest team if they didn't kill each other first. But the guys just like, let's get the show on the road and get this done so we can graduate. And the gals were, well, we could do it this way. Oh, but we could do it this way. Oh, what happens if we do it this way? And they had all these brilliant ideas. The guys are pulling their hair out, just saying, come on, let's just do something. I don't care what we do, just get the job done. So what they ended up doing was having the best project in the time allotted, because the guys made sure they finished on time, and the gals made sure that their design was the best it could be within that time.
Right, so once they finally got their show rolling, they were an amazing team.
Yeah, and if we had a team of 4 that were like any 2 of them, it wouldn't have worked. The guys would have immediately gotten something done, but it was a piece of junk, or the gals would have gotten all sorts of ideas and never gotten anything done.
Right.
And so it really showed me how important it is to have this diversity.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a gender issue, but different people tend to look at things differently, and the combination comes up with the best possible output.
And I understand that that you were very careful as a teacher to make sure that your students were using critical thinking, and I believe you set your students a particular test question when the Shuttle Columbia disaster
came apart
in 2003.
Yeah, that happened on a Saturday morning, and I kind of had a good idea pretty quickly as to what had happened. Because, why do all of the network stations have liftoff footage available that shows this piece of foam hitting the thing? And I could see this, the foam comes down. You're looking at a top view of the shuttle, and the foam comes down and makes a right angle turn and comes out to the left, under the wing in powder. So that wasn't a grazing. That was a hard whop. And for it to, make a right angle turn, the mass managed to make a right angle turn and to turn into powder. Mm-hmm. So on Monday, I was, pretty upset about this and sharing it with the students. The student says, space shuttle loses tiles all the time. Who told you that? Maybe it does when it hits the runway, but it sure as heck needs that protection when it's coming through deorbit burn. I mean, when it's coming through, the brakes are smoking. The air, when they get into the atmosphere, is what's slowing the thing down. So those are the brakes smoking. And you need to have your brake pads on. And then I said, wait a minute. Just last week you guys covered thermal expansion in this course, and we're going to have a test on Thursday. You guys know this stuff. And hey, I might even put this on your test, wink, wink. And so they kind of had this warning shot to what to expect, and then I did put it on the test to show them, I made it real simplified. I said, imagine if you have two walls, they're rigid, that don't move, and you stick a pipe between them that's just snug. There's no extra gaps, but it's not force fit in there. It's just loose in there. And then the pipe expands and needs to expand more than those walls allow it to. At what point is it going to pop through the wall? And that is how I kind of designed the problem, but I gave a diagram of the shuttle. I said, if you have trouble seeing it in terms of this real problem, just imagine, the wall with pipe in it. And 1/3 got the problem 100% correct. 1/3 kind of got it pretty close. Another third, this is the saddest part, didn't even try, because they said, well, if NASA can't figure it out, how do you expect us to? And that's what I was trying so hard to overcome. And, so 2/3 of the class were right on top of it in terms of understanding that you can break anything down into something very simple if you look at it, and you can simplify what the actual problem is. And what the answer was to the problem was 215 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the temperature at which you would get your first failure. And some of the students would come up, well, I don't know if you can tell me this, but what did I do wrong? This is way too low of a number. I said, well, maybe that's what the number is. And 2 months later, they found the equivalent of the flight data recorder, and it showed thermocouples right there where that failure was, and it was approximately 210 to 220 degrees Fahrenheit where the failure happened. We were, right on the money. And so that was the neatest learning experience for the students. Hey, we got it. And when the report came out, so I told the students the reason why I was giving all this, data as to how we formulated the problem, so they would know when the report came out that we had it right all along. And 6 months later, when the report came out, I had several students call me and email me saying we're right. They're on co-op assignment and showing their paper off to their colleagues, and we're very proud of it. And one of them wrote me saying that their supervisor was quite impressed with how calmly they could, just make simple calculations for approximating something without having to throw it into a big computer program and, grind numbers to it. You could just, get a good estimate. You may not have it to 10 significant digits, but you have a good idea about where you're going. Yeah. And that was sort of one of the highlights of my career there.
Yeah. So do you think you're a natural visual thinker?
Very much so.
And do you think that you help? This is what helps you see things quite uniquely. Especially the way the Twin Towers disappeared.
Right. To be able to, simplify the problem into, a simple model. Again, it doesn't have to be exact down to the 10 significant digits, but to just do this, real quick approximation to understand about what kind of thing you should expect. To be able to simplify something down, which is, on 9/11, that's what I did with the billiard ball exercise. It wasn't that I was modeling the building, but if you're going to have something ka-chunkity chunk, this progressive kind of deal, how long should it take? And so I was just using the billiard balls as timing because they're each a different color, but they all have the same properties. So you could follow a blue ball and a red ball, and same aerodynamic properties. And so that's what I mentally went through that day. I didn't write it up until, a couple of years later. And I also mentally went through the exercise of turning the tower on its side and having a runner, run down. And just did various, quick mental exercises about what I would expect. And it just wasn't adding up. You don't need to do horrendously difficult calculations to just get a ballpark idea of, wait, something here is way off.
Yeah.
And actually, I presented that billiard ball exercise. It's not a model; it's an exercise, just a mental exercise. I presented that at an engineering conference, and at the end, one fellow said, "Well, back up, show us that video again." He whips out his pocket watch. He wants to time it. And the guy on the other side of the room stood up and said, wait. So it's not 10 seconds, it's 10.2 seconds, it's 10.9 seconds, it's even 11 seconds or 12 seconds. That's a long way away from 100 seconds. And the guy looks back at his pocket watch and reluctantly starts tucking it back in his pocket, and he's kind of spaced out, and he says, "Oh, yeah, you're right." I mean, the gravity of the whole matter just hit him at that moment.
Yeah. 10 seconds, 8 seconons. It's a lot than 100 seconds, or a lot shorter than 100 seconds, which is perhaps the minimum.
Right. Or even if you had, I did this also scenario of if you have 9 out of every 10 floors gutted out. Let's say you have a whole lot of damage, and you're just letting each, 1 out of every 10 floors drop free fall for the whole 10 stories, and then it poof goes into dust because that's what we saw happening, and it doesn't have enough energy to pulverize, but we'll pretend it does. It doesn't have enough energy to break free the next floor, but we'll pretend it does. Just look at the timing. It knocks free the next floor, and that one drops another 10 stories and so forth. That's 30 seconds. Just 10 by 10. 1 by 1 is about 100 seconds. So just looking at the timing itself, it doesn't add up. But how many people tend to look at things that way? They start thinking it's real complicated. Sure, to find the exact time of what it actually should have taken, but we're getting a ballpark idea of just to get a feel for it. And with those numbers, you could see that. Wait a minute,
out of the ballpark, wasn't it?
Yeah, to the point that I'm objective. Am I crazy, or is the rest of the world crazy? And maybe I memorized the coefficient of gravity wrong. So I got out my physics book and looked in the back. No, that's the number. But wait, maybe that's a typo that I memorized. Maybe that's where I got the wrong number from. And I pulled out another physics book. It was the same. But wait a minute. Now, that can't explain it. So why don't other people get it? That was the biggest. I hear a beat.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button there.
Oh, okay. So people who are used to needing something in a different format may have had a more difficult time seeing that the problem wasn't what they were telling them it was. But being comfortable with simplifying things and anticipating physically what I should be seeing made it so obvious to me.
Now, you realised that the NIST report was fraudulent as well, and I think you were the first whistleblower, so that made you eligible to file the Ketam case. Is that right?
You're right. You got that right. Yeah. I brought up these various issues with them. First of all, they called it the final report of the collapse of the World Trade Center. Why are they calling it a collapse? They hadn't determined it was a collapse. They're calling it a collapse. So that was one of the first things. Then I also gave them the billiard ball write-up, and the timing didn't add up, and a few other things, whatever struck me that was bothering me about the report. But the NIST report, which is very interesting, that it isn't all that wrong, the data in it. They just misinterpret it and don't take certain things into consideration. They have this stuff in the report, but they just didn't consider it. So, and that comes into another category. But the Smith-Mundt Act was still into effect back then, and I think it was 2012. They kind of like disarmed the Smith-Mundt Act, which means a government report, to another government agency cannot have psyops in it. You can't put photoshopped material in it. It has to be correct. You can misinterpret, you can omit stuff, but you can't put in fake data. So that's a blessing with the NIST report, that what's in there is correct information. It just may be misinterpreted, or just omitted in their analysis.
Right. Because
like they did have in there that there's no S and P, no detectable S and P waves in the seismic readings. They just didn't know what to think of it.
Well, the report only went up until the buildings started to come apart, didn't they? They didn't actually do. The report didn't actually go into anything that happened once the buildings began coming apart.
Right. Well, they did have stuff in there, but they didn't take that into consideration, because if they had, they couldn't have come up with the answer they came up with.
Right.
And so, they when I called them on it, they said, they have this analysis of the tipping top of Tower 2, and I said that violates the laws of conservation of angular momentum. And they said, oh, no, it doesn't, because we didn't analyze the collapse. Only up to that point. So even though they had that in there, it made it look like they analyzed it, but they just didn't include that with their final conclusion. They just didn't consider it because they couldn't lie. They're restricted from having fraudulent information. They can omit stuff and misinterpret stuff, but they can't put in fraudulent information. And that limited them from analyzing the collapse, because had they analyzed the collapse, there's no way they could call it a collapse.
And I believe you went right through the courts, didn't you? You went right up to the High Court, was it?
Yes. The lower court said they dismissed it, saying, keep in mind who the defendants are. Members of the military-industrial complex. The lower court judge dismissed it because, well, one of the reasons was he wasn't going to hear a case about who shot JFK or what landed on the moon. Excuse me, sir, maybe you didn't read the case and misinterpreted it, or he put in various things that seemed like he'd been reading, troll forums. Something about airplanes and about bombs in the building, and those things are not part. He also said that she blames the U.S. military, that the U.S. military did it. No, I don't say who did it. That my issue was science fraud. That those contractors who worked on the NIST report committed fraud. They allowed a fraudulent report to go forward when they knew better. They knew it was fraudulent. And anyway, it went to the Court of Appeals, and those judges at least respected me enough so that they put into their written decision that they acknowledged the law applied to this case, but they're ignoring this law to dismiss the case.
They ignored the law to dismiss the case.
Right. So, okay, maybe what they're saying is they don't want to have their hands in that.
They didn't want to touch it, did they?
Right, and maybe they want the Supreme Court to deal with it. So, okay, we submit it to the Supreme Court, and, we kind of know what the answer is going to be, but we'll say we did everything we could do, and that'll be on the record. Yeah, the Supreme Court now, I think as of 1987, is it 86? I forgot the exact date. They no longer have to hear cases, except ones that they just feel like hearing. Well, they didn't feel like hearing this one. It didn't bother them that the Court of Appeals ignored the law in order to dismiss the case. That wasn't a problem for them. So they don't have to say why they decide they don't want to hear the case. It isn't that they dismiss it. They just don't want to hear it. They just deny the case. And so that ended it. That was the end of the road.
Yeah, so they just stick their fingers in their ears and go, blah, blah, not listening, blah, blah,
right.
Go away. And not
but the saddest part of it all is that, here these judges ignoring the law to dismiss the case. Why could they get away with it? Because people let them. There were only like 5 of us who were supportive of my case. Others didn't know about it because I couldn't advertise my case. When you're involved in a case, you can't advertise it. But who else was there? In the truth movement, if somebody mentioned the case, they were banned from the group to keep that information from being known. Because had enough people known about it and made noise, and I can't help it if others advertise the case and put it in the newspapers or whatever. You bet the Court of Appeals would not have been able to get away with sweeping it under the carpet.
Interesting. Now
that's the most tragic part of it all. Is those who want quote a new investigation and want to get it into the courts and want to put people under oath. If this case had gone forward, you bet people would have been put under oath. I don't know who did 9/11, but I'm almost sure that particular defendants know. They know whose technology it is because that was their job, to know whose technology it was. They're developers and manufacturers of energy weapons. Also, they had then, and they still have, I believe, a contract with the U.S. government to know everything about any weapon of mass destruction that exists or is being developed anywhere. So they would not only be able to recognize the technology, they would know whose technology it was.
I believe that these particular companies were involved in some of the experiments that the NIST report used.
Yes, they Applied Research Associates, ARA, had the most number of employees on their contract of any organization. And they are manufacturers and developers of energy weapons. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, very interesting. Now, the Center for Research Applied Chronology. This was a mock paper, wasn't it? Sent in.
The crap paper.
Yeah.
Center for Research and Applied Phrenology.
Yeah, or CRAP.
Yep.
In other words.
The acronym.
This was submitted by some students. Just tell us a little bit about that. That was to show up the.
No, were they students at Cornell? I forgot exactly where they were. There was a whole lot of hoopla being made out of these new open access journals online that were supposed to be peer reviewed, and they wanted to test the peer review process. So they had a computer program that just put out gibberish, but nicely formatted. It kind of looked like a legitimate paper, but it was just nonsense.
The Bentham Journal, I think it was submitted to.
The Bentham Open Journal. And it was accepted as long as they paid the $800 fee. And then they said, well, we withdraw. It passed peer review. Obviously, no one had read it because it was just gibberish. Yeah, and
I understand that this is the same. The Bentham Open Journal are the ones who peer reviewed the thermite.
Right. It wasn't the exact same one, but it's owned and run by the same outfit. They have a bunch of different ones.
Right, okay.
It's in Saudi Arabia or someplace like that. I forgot exactly where it is.
Right, so if you want something to look like it's got some kind of balls to it, you can just pay $800 and they'll peer review it for you, no problem.
But it is a problem now that, the bean counters, like, quote, peer-reviewed papers. So you have, lots of outfits doing peer-reviewed papers, and a lot of people having all this labor-intensive, reviewing, and people just are busy, and so they let things slide by, and you have all this junk out there, and pretty soon finding any information is like finding a needle in a haystack. And the whole thing of higher education has really been messed up in the past 10 to 15 years. It was headed that way, but it's really gotten there now. For example, you have grants, okay? So to get cheap labor, you have graduate students. So you have graduate students to get your work done. So that's how you have graduate students. After the graduate students graduate, then what? And so there's all these extra graduate students moving through the system as cheap labor. And so now there's a glut of them. And it just, everything is kind of like at saturation point. And we need to get back to, not giving credit for how many papers you put out there, but just how, are you helping our society? Are you helping the discipline? And the value of it. I would think that one paper should be counted as wonderful if it's one of real substance. rather than 10 of this fluff stuff. If somebody just going through the bean counter checklist, and that's what it's turned into. So that there's this glut of nonsense papers out there now.
Right. Well, we're going to take a short break here, and we'll come back with this amazing discussion. Well, I think it's amazing anyway. Thank you, Judy. We'll be back shortly. The people who set up 9/11 certainly are quite twisted in one way or another, and this was something that another angle of the whole event that I wanted to look at as well, which is that the way so you have this event, and then you have a truth movement set up, but to me it feels that the truth movement is just another way to get the American people to hate themselves and to hate their government and to shout out to the world, look at our country, look what we did to the land of the free. We, the people, who were allowed to have a say in electing our government. We created this thing, and we turned this country into a complete cesspit. And the American people, I feel, are being encouraged to shout this message to the world, to say, look how stupid we've been, look what we've turned the land of the free into, look what this beautiful thing, look what's happened. And I feel that this message will be heard loud and clear by emerging nations who are already well ahead in the game, or plan, if you might choose to see it in those terms. And the answer will be not more democracy and not the saving of democracy and freedoms within the world. It will be less, in fact, no democracy. We will end up with so-called experts put in positions of power because people are too stupid to elect their own leaders. They cannot be trusted to elect their own leaders, and so we will end up with just experts in these positions of power, making sure that people are not allowed to choose because the people turn out to be such idiots when they are allowed to choose. And I mean, it kind of reminds me of like a business. If you were part of a business, and it wouldn't make sense to publicly belittle that business because your shares would just drop and you'd be wide open to a takeover. I mean, you look at Ratner, what was his name? Thingy Ratner, who owns the jewelry company. Ratner. He suddenly started saying that his product's crap, and his share, the shares of his company went, bottoms up, and the company was completely flattened, and that was that. And I feel that it's this same kind of feeling that's happening within this pinnacle of the so-called free world, that the people are being encouraged to shout, look how stupid we've been. We've allowed this to happen. We've been given the opportunity to elect our leaders, and look what we did. We elected complete idiots, and now they've gone and done this. And I think,
excellent. We've elected these idiots, and now we don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, what are we going to do?
We're helpless. We can't think. We can't operate.
Yeah, and it just leaves it wide open for someone to come in with the answer and say, right, well, you're just such big idiots. We're going to have to take over with this system, and that's going to be something I don't think a lot of people would welcome. That's going to be an angry takeover.
I think they will welcome it, and I hadn't seen it from the angle that you're talking about, and that's brilliant. I think you're right on the target. How I had been seeing it is, and people say, well, the U.S. government did this, and I said, well, how do you know? And they said, well, who else could have? And I said, well, let's say you're one of 5 people who want to take over the world. You want to take over the U.S. You don't go in the front door because the U.S. military come get you. What you do is you poof the towers. You get it, or know somebody you can hold a gun to their head and have them do it, and then you or buy it, and then you get a truth movement going to get people to destroy their country from within, to get them to hate their own government so badly they want any government but the one they have, and then you walk in the front door and they welcome you with open arms.
Yeah.
But what you had added to that, I think it makes it even more powerful, is that, and something, maybe because I am in the U.S., is that all this belittling or trashing of our government makes it look like we can't function this way. We can't be counted on to elect an intelligent person to lead us. So please come help us, anybody. The country is free for the taking. That's what it does kind of seem like that.
Yeah. I think it's a very sensitive situation in that respect, to be shouting and bawling to the world, look how incompetent our freely elected government is. I know that these people, we have a similar situation in this country where we're being encouraged to see how stupid and incompetent and greedy the people who move into positions of elected power, or that we elect these people, put them in positions of power, and then what do? They sleep with prostitutes or their secretaries, and they spend money on extra houses and don't declare it on their expenses or something, as if they
well, if you don't like what they're doing, elect somebody else.
Elect somebody else, yeah. But I really feel that even these politicians, they've been allowed to kind of go and graze on all this kind of opulence. Go. They haven't been reined in at all, and now it's just being thrown in people's faces. Look how sleazy and disgusting these people are, and they have been set up as much as the people have been set up, I think. And but
it's a self-destruct process, I think.
Yeah, very much. But the people you see in these positions, they don't realize how they've been set up, and they're just trying to kind of save their own skin. And people who are set up within so-called truth movements, they they're just the angry mob. They just want to shout about something, and they're having all their buttons pushed just to kind of be yelling and be angry about about the politicians who've been set up. It's a setup. It's all
and it keeps people busy.
Pardon?
And it keeps people busy.
Yeah, keeps your mind busy, keeps you from stopping and thinking, what really happened to those towers on that day?
There's a quote I have in the start of chapter 2 that I'd like to read.
Please do. Yep.
Yeah. When people think you make them think, they will like you. When you really make them think, they will hate you.
Well,
so I'm thinking of, why were people attracted to this truth movement? First of all, do you think that those who planned 9/11 just forgot to plan a cover-up? They're going to leave a paper trail to the front door? And why are people so easy to manage? And I came to the conclusion, and I've also got the idea from a particular blog by Jack Pelham. Yeah, it was a beautiful concept. You're using that same quote, that people who recognize that something wasn't right on 9/11, they thought they were clever, and so they joined the truth movement, and they're getting pats in the back. Yeah, you're clever. You figured out the official story is wrong. Aren't you wonderful? But they don't go beyond that, because they think they're thinking. Yeah. They're not really thinking. And it allows them to stay in this kind of holding pattern.
Yeah. And also I feel that the truth movement has another function, in that I know people who have maybe seen things on the internet and looked at things on the internet and just come to the conclusion, what a load of old rubbish, that doesn't make sense. And so it pushes them away, and they're not going to look at anything alternative to what the mainstream is saying. Or not that they're really looking at what the mainstream is saying. They're just not going to look into
they're going to look any further
events of 9/11 and anymore. And I have a friend that this very same thing, and I was trying to explain some of your work, and he was like, "No, I've heard things about
the space beams."
Not even space beams. It was all just like thermite stuff, and she was just like, I just don't buy it. It doesn't make sense. It's not.
Thermite's a welding material. It's insane to think that thermite's going to do anything to the towers. It's going to in 8 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, don't they use it in fireworks? We've just had bonfire night here. There was an awful lot of, huge fireworks and firecrackers going off, and you've got you have July the 4th, don't you?
Right. It's used mainly in welding. It's also used by the military because it melts things, to melt a gun barrel, so you don't need to collect your enemy's guns when you invade their town. Or their village. You just make all their guns useless. Yeah. But it's also used for burning paper. Like if you have top secret documents and the enemy is invading your camp, you just burn all your papers instantly. So that's what they use it for. But it would also look like a 4th of July sparkler, because you've seen a welding torch. You see sparks spitting out all over the place. Yeah. It would create that type of thing. The towers would look like a giant 4th of July sparkler, spitting sparks, and it would blind people. Yeah. By the brightness, and the heat would, of course, be lots of heat. You'd end up with this melted blob of stuff. Yeah. Because it would all have to be going off at exactly the same time in every beam within that building as well for it to. I was thinking of this mental image. But imagine if you have a dozen people with a welding torch, and they're gonna have a race to see who can cut through this beam the fastest. Yeah. They're not going to finish at the same time. Yeah. They're going to finish. I think we all intuitively know this. They're going to finish at slightly different times because of how things are going. So there's no way you could calculate how to ignite. Well, it's just ridiculous. And even if you did 110 stories falling, would have created such a seismic signal within the Earth, and it would have completely smashed the bathtub at the base of the World Trade Centers as well. So right, there's problems upon problems. It's just, it's not. You don't use welding torches to turn a building into powder in midair. Yeah, that's just not going to work. So she was completely turned away from looking at anything to do with anomalous effects on 9/11. So that's how the truth movement, actually, it's something I've not publicly stated. Years ago, I maybe 8 years ago, I was trying to get colleagues in other departments interested in this, and they looked into questioning 9/11. They came to the thermite stuff, and they just laughed at that. Was so ridiculous. They went back to the official story and didn't want to talk about anything. These are engineering professors. Yeah. So it works to turn them off. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it does. It works on and to turn people away from the evidence. Yeah. Yeah, and also I feel that since you came forward, because you initially thought that someone would come forward with something to show what you were seeing, but it never happened, and eventually you realized you were going to have to be the one that would come forward and say something. And your work from the beginning, I've just seen it progress and develop and become much. I don't know if it's because I've just understood it better, but just it seems to you seem to have things early on that you were saying that weren't quite so clear, that seem a lot clearer now. It's a lot easier. Like the presentations that you do these days, I feel are very clear to be able to get the gist of what you're saying. Whereas I think your earlier ones, It was clear, but what I was doing, but it wasn't so complete. Like in 2007, I was talking mainly about the dustification, and I would really immerse people in the dust. They, see this dust, because I was studying the dust at that time, the size of the dust and how there was so much dust and very little debris. Yeah. But people tend to want an endpoint. They want to know what the answer is, and they can't just enjoy a particular, chapter of the book. They need to know what the next chapter is going to be, and you didn't have that at that time. And so putting all of these segments in the book, I think, really helps getting it through. But my first thing was, where's this debris? That was my first thing, and then the next thing was, what about the bathtub? If there was debris and it slammed down, it would have destroyed the bathtub. So that was the thing. But other people can't get their hands on that, or their minds around it, because they don't know what that means. And for me, I could easily see, well, if you don't have enough debris, you don't see it. Plus, the bathtub isn't destroyed, and you don't have a big seismic signal. Those are all consistent. And then look at all this dust. And that's where I was in 2007. None of what I've presented at any point have I ever needed to retract or anything, because I don't ever state beyond what I know, what I know that I know. And then, I kept adding more to that, but that data is still clear as a bell. But a lot of people do need the summing up, like they need to see an example of this, like with the Hutchison effect, to see a reproduced version of this, to see, instead of just to realize we don't have enough debris, the bathtub isn't busted, and there's a lot of dust all over the place without an appropriate seismic signal. People don't know what to do with that, I think.
I do. I feel like your work has really kind of developed, and I can see a journey evolving through your work. Whereas through like truth movement stuff, it's pretty stuck really. It started off with the thermite idea, but that never really. It holds a few people, and it turns people away. But it's pretty much had its day really, that idea, and then they start grasping. It seems people start grasping at your work and wanting to try and cherry pick items from your work, and then spin it
to
off.
make the thermite work or something.
Yeah, or make some other kind of mini nukes or some kind of idea. Oh yeah, well Judy Wood's got a good idea here, and so I'll steal this little bit of data from her work, and I'll say, oh well, it's
she misinterpreted. It's really big nuke bombs.
Yeah. So they won't have any kind of qualification to come.
Right, because they're starting also with the endpoint.
Feel that they can use your cherry pick from your work and completely ignore the conclusions that you come to and how you use the evidence that you have.
Yeah, I don't feel the need to have the answer, have the name of the gizmo and the serial number and what the operator had for breakfast and where it was located. Those are irrelevant, so to speak. I mean, if you don't know it, you don't know it. But what we do know, let's look at what we do know. We do know that there's some kind of technology that exists that can turn buildings into powder in midair. And we've never seen that before, but we know that's true because it happened. And so many distractions occur that would keep people from seeing that. And that's one of the other roles of the truther movement, is to distract people away from the evidence, because people tend to, it's a natural tendency for most people to focus on the answer, because that's what our educational system teaches. It's all about coloring in the right, multiple choice on the test. So it's either got to be a BB gun, a slingshot, or a pea shooter, because that's all somebody knows about. And if you can't prove which one of those things it is, then you've got nothing. You've just got speculation. That's one of the arguments. No, we have absolute proof that the building turned into powder in midair. The majority of the building turned into powder in midair. Therefore, that proves that something that can do that exists.
Yeah.
And that's absolute proof. It doesn't say who did it or whatever, but you have to know what happened before you can say who done it.
And to accept that and understand the implications that there is that technology, it is just a mind-blowing conclusion, really, because this is the technology that we're all chasing after. We're all, everyone's like, oh, fuel bills are going through the roof. We can't use this fuel. We can't use that fuel. We're all being kind of hijacked into using nuclear fuel now, and they're building nuclear power stations on fault lines. They want to frack the countries around to pieces. And yet, here is evidence of a technology that uses a meterless energy, an energy that...
clean energy.
An extremely powerful technology of clean energy. They didn't have to plug it in any way.
But it puts power companies out of business, puts oil companies out of business.
Well, this is the crux of it all, isn't it?
But it also puts the PSYOPs outfits out of business, too, because right now they get people all lathered up into this panic that, Iran's developing nuclear power, or they might develop nuclear weapons. And let's panic because there might be a nuke. Yeah. Well, if this kind of weapon exists, who cares about a nuke?
Mm.
It also the thing that I thought was cool that Jesse Ventura pointed out. Why do we have bases in other countries? Mm-hmm. If this kind of technology exists, why do you need bases in other countries?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so you start looking at the implications of this information, and it just keeps going. Everything hinges on it. And what I've come to conclude is, 9/11 was an attack on human consciousness. Mm. To see that people could be hoodwinked so easily is just amazing. It's shocking.
Yeah.
But it is this, talked about the energy, free, clean energy, but they don't really see it. It was demonstrated right in front of them. Mm. So I've come to say that, he who controls the energy controls the people. But he who controls their perception controls everything. Mm. Perception management is what it really is all about. And people are worried about World War III. We're already in World War III. Mm. It's being fought psychologically. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. If you keep people walking on edge about, it might be a nuke here, it might be a nuke here, and it might be a bad guy under your bed, a terrorist here, a terrorist there, that's what the war looks like. Yeah, yeah. And it's everywhere. It's, around the entire planet. Yeah. And if you can't pay your energy bills, then you're going to be working extra hours here, extra hours there. You're not going to have the time or the energy to be thinking about, these kind of matters, or looking into, what the implications are of the Twin Towers turning to dust, and the fact that there is some kind of weaponry out there that is being developed that is using an energy which could be used for so much good. Mm-hmm. And another thing with this, people want to go get the bad guy. They want revenge. Yeah. Well, revenge is one of the lowest, instincts, of animal instincts. Mm. And it turns out when people or animals get into this revenge mode, they shut off logical thinking. Mm. So whether it's Bin Laden they have him aimed at, or Saddam Hussein, whoever they have it aimed at, or let's go after Bush and Cheney, when people are in revenge mode, they're easy to manipulate because their logic has been short-circuited. And also, if you got this guy pushed the buttons, that made it happen. Well, you take him out of the picture, and you got another one that's ready to operate the same gizmo, because the gizmo is out there. Yeah. This technology exists. So getting rid of the operator of it doesn't do anything. Mm. So going after the who part of it doesn't keep it from happening again. Mm. Understanding what happened is what does. What happened, yeah. What did we see that day? Yeah. And I think few people realize that significance, that it isn't about getting somebody and making somebody pay. Revenge. The technology exists. That's what we need to note. And that technology, if people could realize that it's out there and we could use it, it makes
so much of power structure impotent, because it means that energy companies no longer have a hold over you. If you could use this energy for, travel, transport, heating, people could live wherever they wanted to live on the globe. They could live anywhere. They would not be reliant anymore on car manufacturers and oil companies, gas companies, electricity companies. All these people would become. People wouldn't have to work so hard at, just to pay the bills and things. You can actually go out and start doing the things that your sole intention in life, if you like. You could go out and start developing those talents that you have, instead of just having to go and earn a buck to pay the energy companies and to keep your car on the road so you can go and visit your elderly, grandmother who lives in another state or something. So the implications of realizing that there is a technology like this around would just floor a lot of the things which we actually see as obstacles and the control system of the world.
It pulls the rug out from under it all, that's for sure. Yeah. But other ones would crop up, like who grows the food and who controls the food. And will you be charged to grow food in your backyard? And who knows what, but it at least makes it pretty obvious that it's a choice, that somebody is doing this. Someone is wanting to control others. Yeah. And I think there's more of a choice to that then. But it does completely change the equation of our world as we know it. And I think this is a good time to think about what changes we would like to see our planet become. I think of my mind. Here's a community of houses, and instead of going to work one day, I play a cello. That person over there plays a violin. Let's get together and play some music. Yeah. And that person over there likes to paint. And they go over there and hang out. And somebody else likes to do barbershop quartets, and they go do that over there. And somebody else likes to do needlepoint. People just start doing what they like to do best, and they're best at what they like to do. Yeah. And people enjoy, learning about the world. Instead of going to college so that you can get the degree so you can make money and get on this treadmill to run faster. And so you can pay back the student loans, and it's a big cycle. Rather than what is it? What is life about anyway?
Now, exactly. Life is there for to develop our skills and to this is,
learn something.
Yeah, this is the way that we're going to learn and experience and become whole-hearted, whole-souled human beings. And I mean, I really see this in the development of teaching with autistic children, because what the autistic children bring is their specific gifts, and the methods of bringing those gifts out, so that these children can actually function within the world, have relationships with people. They don't have to be institutionalized. They're kind of, a lot of autistic kids are quite locked in some way, and through new teaching methods and new ways of teaching these kids and bringing out their gifts, they don't have to be locked in like this all the time. These gifts can be brought out, and this is the same for all of us. You don't have to be autistic for these methods to work with all of us. Through education generally, and not even for children, but for adults as well, that we need to bring out the gifts within us, and instead of just be zombies working for the next paycheck.
There's something else that I was going to send you, but I forgot. That was a video about what autistic people bring to the world. That because they're less likely to be moved, what do you call it, co-opted.
Right, yeah, swayed in their...
Yeah, and that they're very rigid in how they do things, and they're, so they don't conform.
Yeah.
And by not conforming, they're able to show everyone else things that they otherwise wouldn't see.
Yeah, they don't feel embarrassed at certain situations or anything.
Right, because they've been taught that, and so this video I saw was really kind of cute. It was, they're here to bring us out of our boxes.
Yeah.
Not, it's not they need to conform to our boxes. We need to, look outside of our boxes.
They have, yeah.
And it is a beautiful way of looking at things like that. Yeah, why do we have these boxes that are our social structure? That we conform to? Why not just have, be able to look at the good in people and their strengths and what they can do, rather than can they conform? If people can conform, they can be controlled.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if you're under social pressure all the time, if you have to, do that thing every week that social pressure puts you under, then you're in a box. Now, another implication of your work is an observation that you made, which, we'll just look at it as an observation. We're not going to make judgments and say this, that, or the other. But one of your observations was Hurricane Erin, which was just outside of New York on the morning of 9/11. In fact, it had been making its way slowly up the coast for several days.
Oh no, not up the coast. It was heading inland. It was it was out past Bermuda. It was making a beeline straight for Manhattan.
So it would have been reasonable for news reports to be making people, alerting people that there may be a need to evacuate. We're not sure yet, but there may be a need to. Now, this was a hurricane that it wasn't not reported, but it was extremely underreported, wasn't it?
So it wasn't a concern, and I've seen other ones since, like Hurricane Bill, where I know some people live in Manhattan, and people in Manhattan don't have cars, but in case the hurricane got a little bit close, they wanted the choice to be able to evacuate, so they went and rented a car, so they would have a car just in case before the rental cars ran out of cars. And it turns out that it didn't hit New York, but they had their car ready just in case.
Yeah.
Because it's how do you evacuate Manhattan otherwise?
Yeah. And I believe Hurricane Erin was a higher category at that time than Hurricane Sandy was.
Yeah, Erin was a Category 3. Sandy was a 1 or a tropical storm, and it kind of fell apart, and it scraped back together and fell apart. And then it was a tropical storm when it went inland.
Yeah. So so here's a storm that was, or hurricane that was a higher category than Sandy, heading towards New York, and yet nobody's alerted that it may be necessary to be prepared to make an evacuation.
and even here's
isn't it?
Here's a good story. There's Hurricane Irene. That was a 1, but it was busting up over land. It was not going to be anything by the time it got to New York, because it was already kind of beached on the land. Yeah. And they usually get broken up then before it got to Manhattan. Yet they evacuated Manhattan.
Yeah.
Then there's somebody who lived a college professor in Vermont, who had just gotten my book, and right after that they bought 5 more copies, and I was wondering why, and they said because they just happened to have turned to Chapter 18 right when Manhattan was being evacuated, and Chapter 18 is Hurricane Erin, and he had no idea there was a hurricane, on 9/11.
Yeah, I think many people don't have a clue that there was a hurricane there on the day of 9/11. And like we were speaking earlier, you mentioned about the astronauts in the space station. Was it the International Space Station was flying over, and you were saying they could see the dust which was making a trail down the seaboard, and yet they never once mentioned the huge hurricane that they would obviously be able to see.
Right, I think the statement was, well, I'm looking up and down the East Coast to see if we can see anything else. You know, and if you look at where Hurricane Aaron was, they had to aim their camera very carefully not to get the outer bands in the picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just, you know, because it was right over the end of Long Island. It was raining over Cape Cod, and then, you know, this 500, 600 mile diameter storm system. That's a humongous thing.
And it made an interesting track as well, Hurricane Erin, because it went in a straight line up towards New York, stopped, ramped itself up a bit, and then just made a 45-degree turn
or actually 110 degrees. Yeah, almost a U-turn. It was like a 110-degree turn. But there was a high-pressure system across the entire United States at that time. And so depending on where that was going to meet the hurricane, it would turn around. But how did they know exactly where and when? So it did hit it there, but it didn't. They did battle, but it didn't destroy Aaron. Aaron had, came down to the stop, spread the wings out, got bigger in diameter, and slowed down to a Category 1.
Yeah.
And then the afternoon of 9/11 packs up and tightens back up, and 110-degree turn, and then heads out of town that afternoon. And it stayed Category 1 for several days after that. It lived as a hurricane until I think it was the 17th, 15th or 17th of September. It still went up towards Nova Scotia. It started on the 1st of September, so it was the longest-lived hurricane of the season. It also had more cyclonic energy in the system, in that storm system, than Hurricane Katrina. The fact that it runs into this high-pressure system and it doesn't destroy it. The two systems do battle, and Hurricane Aaron, survives as a hurricane. Yeah. Turns around and moves around.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just interesting in itself that this was never reported. Or, sorry, it was reported, but it was just underreported, wasn't it? It was never a big deal. Certainly, I don't...
Yeah, there's a CNN article I saw. I put it on my website. I copied it, put it on the website in case it disappeared, where they're worried about closing down Atlantic City beaches for fear of the undertow from the hurricane. And there's also other reports where they took various battleships out to sea because you don't want them sitting at the docks if you have
yeah, it's better
heavy weather. Yeah. And actually on the CBS news report, it did say on the map, on the morning weather thing, about 10 minutes to 15 minutes before the North Tower got its hole, it says rough seas. But it says, as nice as can be. The weather's going to be as nice as can be.
So to me, that seems quite suspicious. And, I mean, for me, it leads me to believe that there was some kind of control going on there, and so...
Or, no matter which way you look at it, it's weird. You could say, oh, maybe they didn't want people evacuated because they wanted them sitting in front of their TV sets.
Yeah.
Watching the event.
Thinking about something else, yeah.
or who knows what, or was it part of the system that was involved, or it was so much in the background that people weren't concerned about it. Yeah. But when I mapped out the pressure system at JFK Airport, you can see that the high pressure system is moving in because you see the pressure go up and then boom, it immediately starts down. When the low pressure system, the hurricane, arrives, and so that peak is at 10 a.m. on 9/11. In other words, that's when they were doing the battle, the two storm systems. Also on 9/11, the three major airports surrounding Manhattan reported thunder. JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark airports all reported thunder. So people think of it being a beautiful blue sky, but it was within the field effects of the hurricane. You know how people say they feel a storm coming?
Yeah, yeah.
They can feel
the
energy in the weather system.
Yeah.
And there's evidence of such energy in the weather system because we have reports of thunder that happens ahead of the storm system. Like, birds know when to head for cover when there's a hurricane coming. They know to go hunker down somewhere. And you can actually tell which way a hurricane's going sometimes by how the birds are. Have the birds all left or gone into hiding?
So there's, I mean, for me, I see this as just another sort of sign that there is weather modification technology around, or the ability to
be so sure of when that weather system is going to turn around. So sure, you have to be 100% sure in order to not tell the people in Manhattan about it, to give them a chance to evacuate.
Yeah, it does kind of make you think that they might know what it was going to do, and if they knew what it was going to do, then perhaps it was being controlled in some way.
If it was right there, just outside of town, what about the storm surge? JFK Airport's right at sea level, and LaGuardia, all three airports basically are.
Yeah.
But especially JFK, it's right on the water. Yeah. Well, and you raise the water table, and it's flooded.
Especially now as well, when you see so many storms hitting different countries, and this one just in the Philippines recently that was absolutely devastating the area, and I can't help feeling that we're being sold global warming, man-made global warming, and quite conveniently there are these superstorms, and I feel also that just because we do have an awful lot of reporting these days, and we have instant access to information, it brings this information closer to home. I mean, years ago, we never used to get news of things that were happening in China, or things that were happening in Malaysia or something, unless there was like maybe a massive earthquake or something. You wouldn't really hear an awful lot of these things, and yet now there's so much reporting. It's
but the nasty storm business didn't start up until kind of recently. They especially in the Midwest and the United States, these super duper tornado outbursts.
Yeah.
It's Tornado Alley, yes, but these super duper ones, they're much bigger and more robust than before. We have to stop and say, what are we doing to our environment? If this is unintended consequences, not deliberately planned, caused, and so forth, but unintended consequences from something else. And the biggest thing I can see is a change is electrifying our atmosphere. We have cell phones, we have brand new digital television, brand new radio frequency transmitters. We have all sorts of wireless communication. Now we're getting quote smart meters. What is that doing to our environment? Charging it up. What effect does that have on creating super duper storms?
Yeah.
And that, I would like to see a study on that.
Yeah. I mean, we've moved over here from analog to digital system, and it's going to be interesting to see. I think that there was a tornado just off the coast here.
There've been several.
Where was it? It was up near Southampton, was it? Portsmouth, which is about how many miles? About 20 miles away.
30, 40.
Oh, right. So it's about 30 miles, 40 miles away.
They've been since 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I really wonder about not necessarily digital versus analog, but that with the switchover, suddenly we have brand new transmission towers installed.
Yeah.
And what are they transmitting? And is it the radio frequency signal that's interfering with the static field? that's doing that.
That's where John Hutchison's work comes in, isn't it? Because when you have interfering frequencies within a static field, that's when it can cause anomalous effects.
Right. He creates a static field with. He used to use a Tesla coil, and then he later started using a Van de Graaff generator. But a hurricane is like a big, huge Tesla coil. So he creates a static field, and within the static field interferes various radio frequency signals. Well, Houston, we have a problem. If you have a normal static field from whatever weather system you have moving through, and then have brand new radio frequency transmitters interfering with them, you're fixing to mess up.
You could be ramping up the weather.
Also, you add to that all sorts of smart meters.
Yep.
So there really needs to be a look into that before they keep expanding that and developing it further. It's like we suddenly have these horrendous storm systems. Is there a relationship? Now, I can say when it happened in the U.S., the super duper tornadoes started in the summer of 2008. And guess what? 2009 in February was the switchover date, the final switchover for digital television.
That was when every state was finally
required to, where everyone was required to. So you could bet the year before that is when they were installing brand new radio frequency transmission towers. And ever since 2008, there have been horrendous super duper tornadoes. Is that a coincidence?
That is interesting. So, I mean, what we could be seeing here is that it's not, man-made
intended
CO2 that's causing weather anomalies and changes, but it could be something to do with the radio frequency technology.
And then you think about cell phones now. We didn't used to have cell phones, but now, the transmission of cell phones all over through our environment. And cell phone towers, more and more towers going up.
Yeah.
It's, those things can't just be ignored.
Well, Judy, I think we're going to take another short break here and just give our listeners time to muse over some of the thoughts and things, and we'll just come back for a final 20 minutes. It's been fascinating.
Okay, great.
Back in 3 minutes, or thereabouts. And we're back with Dr. Judy Wood on the Detox this evening. It's been a fascinating conversation, Dr. Judy. Thank you so much for coming on. Now, we've just been talking about things like the weather there and the anomalous effects of the weather, but one of the that are implicated with the 9/11 as well, with the hurricane and everything. But one of the most disturbing things, which is involved in the whole events that happened that day, is the amount of jumpers who left the building. Is it something like 1,500?
I think it's probably around 1,200. But if you're going to add up the number of bodies that were identifiable, there's the 1,200 that left the building early. People call them jumpers. I don't think many of them intended to jump, if any of them did. And then there's the 343 firefighters that were lost. So you add those together, you get 1,543.
Right, okay. So around 1,200 people left the building that day, shall we say?
Left the building early, yep.
Yeah, and I'm not coming through the staircase at the bottom and out the front door. They actually left through the windows rather high up. Now, what the conclusion that what you were saying in your book is that you feel that there was some kind of an effect going on there for these people, which they weren't. Now we talked earlier about the hurricane, and you were saying that there were the field effects of that hurricane were being felt on land in the form of thunder and lightning. Now,
well, let's look at just what evidence we have, not what evidence we want to have or think we have, but what does the evidence show, and what evidence we get from the firefighters who felt utterly helpless. And I can't think of a more upsetting feeling than to feel helpless. If there's something you can do, you're doing it and you're focused on doing it, but feeling helpless is wicked. And they're trained to save lives, and here are these people coming out of the windows, and there's just no way they can save them. And there's one fellow that they had to watch him and hang on to him because he was going to go out there and try to catch somebody, and he would have been killed too. But there's, and these people have been on the firefighters for like 20 years. They've been on the force, and they'd never seen more than one person jump from a building. And that was like a third-story building or something. But they never had seen people jumping from a building like that. So there's something unusual about it. Why would people be jumping from a building? And then there's other things I started noticing. On the 105th floor, there's 5 stories from the top, the 105th floor, there are people dangling outside of the building. There's one guy hanging by a hand and a foot. It looked like he was hanging from a hand and a foot, taking his pants off. He didn't have a shirt on anymore. He'd already gotten that off. And you look around, you see others have getting their shirts off or pants off. Now, what on earth would get someone to want to take their clothes off? Dangling from the outside of the building. You didn't see smoke coming out the windows. But let's say it's a smoky environment in there, and for who knows what reason they want to take the pants off. Why not just take in a big, deep breath, step inside, take the pants off, and get back outside? What necessitated taking the clothes off outside the building? That was a weird thing. But if there's a fire, firefighters don't fight fires in the nude. The more clothes you wear, the better, because it protects you. It's a layer of safety between you and the fire. So why would someone want to take their clothes off? And also dangling from the outside of the building, it's cold up there. 105th floor, that's a quarter mile up off the ground. You think of an observation deck of a big, tall building. It's breezy up there. It's always cold. You always want to put your windbreaker on.
Yeah.
Why would somebody want to strip down? It makes no sense. And I got to thinking, okay, let me put myself there. I always keep extra clothes in my desk. I don't know if others do that or not, like a T-shirt or something. You can always change if you end up dumping something on yourself. And, well, if there was a fire there, I'd want to head to the bathroom as fast as I could before we lost water pressure and get those extra clothes wet, maybe wrap them around my head and head for the stairs. So I'd be wet. Well, if the fire sprinklers kicked on, I'd be wet. If they didn't kick on, if it was a fire there, you'd be hot, and you'd be sweating, and you'd be wet. So chances are pretty good that they were wet. And perhaps that's why they need to take off their clothes. What would necessitate taking off wet clothes? Perhaps there's some strange energy field within the building that affected wet clothes more than dry clothes. I can't think of anything else. Can you?
Not really, no.
So this isn't proof of anything, but we know something weird is going on there because just nothing makes sense. And this is the only thing I could, think of that made sense. If we have an energy field within the building, like microwave, and we've seen active denial systems. You do it for crowd control. They microwave a crowd to make them break up. People just cannot stand to sit. They had reporters, volunteer to test it, and he goes 100, and he just runs out of the field. Yeah,
no, I've seen a guy. Even he was holding a mattress in front of him, and he still couldn't stand there for more than 15, 20 seconds. And
oh no, it's like he gets up to a count of 3 and he's done.
Oh really? Even with the mattress?
Right. Maybe we got one more second longer or something, but it's still, he was done with it. He had to run, and that's why it breaks up crowds, because people will not stay there. You have to get out of the way. Think of if your stove burner was red hot and you put your hand on it, you're not going to think about, should I take my hand off? No, your hand just flies off of there from reflex.
Yeah.
So if you feel like that in an environment, you're going to be jumping out of that environment without even thinking about it. And because it's so painful, you just cannot think even. You're just reacting. So that's another thing consistent with people going out the window. And there's one particular there's several of the victims that I really related to their stories. They really touched me deeply. And one was Elaine Gentle. Her husband, she called on her cell phone and said, it's fire, but everything's under control. We got wet rags around our heads, and we're going to be heading down the stairs. And he says, okay, call me on your cell phone when you get to the bottom. And 2 or 3 stories later, she was out the window, ended up on Liberty Street, dead, of course. So no intention of jumping out of the window.
Yeah.
What would cause that? And she was perfectly sane until then. If it was that tough, wouldn't she have turned, if it was normal conventional fire, wouldn't she have turned around and just gone back up where she came from?
Yeah.
And it really bothered him, wanting to know what happened. And if there had been an energy field there, it would be explained why suddenly somebody's out the window without realizing whether they jumped or some energy field propelled them out or what happened, who knows. But there's, whatever way you look at it, there's something not right there. And that wouldn't occur if there were bombs in the building or thermite or whatever. That, how would these people know? They wouldn't create so much fear they'd want to jump out the window. They'd run down the stairs fast they could, if anything, but it wouldn't, cause them to jump out the windows. But a strange energy field would.
And also, people inside the buildings using their cell phones and things would be able to be reporting that, the beams are all going up in sparks. They would have been saying these kind of things if there was some kind of
thermite going on.
But also you use what's the word, where there's a transcript, that's it, of a conversation that a woman is having with a sponsor.
I heard it, the recording of it.
Yeah.
Melissa Doy. I'm burning up, I can't breathe. This is the way she was talking. It's really hot, I'm choking, nobody can breathe here, it's really hot. And the 911 operator says, well, is there fire? Of course there's fire. Or is there smoke? Of course there's smoke. Never once did you hear her cough and choke. And I thought, okay, this is fake. But then you stop and think about, no, let's see if it could be for real. And the only explanation I can think of is if she's being microwaved, she's thinking she's burning up, but is physically not burning up. Because if you're really hot in cooking, if you've ever been in a sauna too long, the reason why they have a limit for how long you can be in the sauna or a hot tub is because after a certain point you cannot make your muscles work. They're out of commission. Because you at that temperature they don't work. And so when you start approaching that, it becomes very hard to move. It's like honey. You're walking through honey instead of water, and it's just you're so lethargic.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be. It's really hot. I'm burning up. I can't breathe. That does not jive with somebody who is. And this goes on for 5 minutes. And she's definitely in distress, but it doesn't jive with the room actually being hot. But it does jive with somebody who senses something's hitting their sensory system that is perceived as heat, without physically being, cooked.
Yeah.
And that's what the microwave does, on the surface first. A lighter level of microwave hits the skin, like the top nano layer of the skin. You feel like you're burning up, but you're physically not hot yet.
Very interesting. You see, it's all these kind of things that I just think are so important with your work, because you just have such a the way you look at things. You have such an interesting perspective on the whole day and everything within that day. from the people who left the building to the actual disappearance of the buildings themselves. And also the fact, I think you're the only person that actually mentioned that it wasn't just 2 buildings that went that day, it was 7 buildings that were damaged. Well, we completely lost...
destroyed.
Yeah, that were destroyed.
The middle, approximately 50% of Building 6, right down to the ground, is just a void.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. And the main body of Building 4 just went away, and you could almost sweep up the remains. It just looked like it was sliced off with a knife.
Yeah.
It's really strange, these cylindrical cutouts. And then there's other strange things that happen, like I think Michael Mako is his name, during the destruction of Tower 2. He's making a run for it. He's, finally he dives under an emergency services vehicle and hunkers down, and everything goes black, and he assumes he's buried in, deep debris. Yeah. But then as the dust clears, the sunlight comes in, he's looking up at the sunlight. Wait, where's the truck he dove under? He didn't remember it rolling off of him or being lifted off of him. It just wasn't there anymore. Imagine diving underneath, a big emergency services vehicle, and then, hunkering down. Then when the dust clears, it's not there on top of you anymore.
I mean, I've heard the 9/11 Truth movement. They talk about Building 7 a lot, but they never mention any of the other buildings that were destroyed there.
Building 7 was pretty weird in itself. It isn't mentioned.
Yeah.
It didn't even spill across the street.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of just disappeared into its own footprint. It didn't.
It was just the outer walls left. There wasn't much of the innards left at all. The dust chairs and all that, and toilets. Yeah. Just the outer walls. That was it.
Left.
And dirt. They trucked in dirt pretty quickly, so it was this big mud pile it turned into. But there's this picture I have from the top of Building 2, the Tower 2 or Tower 1, looking down onto Building 7. You can look way down there. You see 3 lanes of traffic. And across the street, you see the post office. To realize a 47-story building went away and didn't fully spill across the street and cover the sidewalk on the other side. Oh. It left, the sidewalk. Some of the sidewalk was uncovered. How's that happen? And also, if you have explosives going off, they're going to be shooting stuff out at supersonic speed out the windows, and you're going to, the adjacent buildings are going to look like they're machine gun fired. That didn't happen. It was silent even. If you have a building full of stuff that's like a 230,000-ton building that's crashing to the ground, it should sound like it was raining dump trucks. But it was silent. Essentially silent.
I know you have one testimony of someone who was close to the buildings, and then he went down, I don't know, one of the streets wasn't in view of the building, and then the next thing he heard was that
it was gone.
Yeah, one of the Twin Towers had gone, and he was just astonished because he thought, well, how come I didn't hear it?
Yeah, it's hitting the ground that hard. Why don't I remember the sound of it?
Yeah.
And there's also videos of somebody getting interviewed, and behind them is Building 7. This is, late afternoon, and I don't know if it's a camera operator or if it's the interviewer. This woman's talking, and you see the building start heading to the ground, and the person says, I think it's a camera operator, says, whoa, 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 whoa. Suddenly they see the background is dropping.
Yeah.
There's no sound. Yeah. You can hear people down the street chattering and talking.
Yeah.
But you should be hearing this kapoppity, crunchity, boom.
Yeah, it sounds more like a bag of sand being emptied.
Oh, that one? No, not even that one. That one didn't even make noise. The picture out of that Bob and Bree had on their camera, they're overlooking Tower 1, right across diagonally, across the Toasted Car Lot.
Yeah.
Over in Battery Park City, I think it's called. I forgot the exact name of it, something like that. And it sounds like shh, like a waterfall.
Yeah.
And you can still hear them talking. I was just so impressed with how how she reacted to it. She says, "Oh, is the air conditioner turned off?" And starts closing the door, and how to react to it instead of just screaming. Different people have different ways of reacting, but here she was thinking so clearly. Make sure the air conditioner's turned off, and is this safe to breathe? But you hear no poppity, crunchity, bang. You just hear this shh.
Yeah.
And there's also a doctor who was half the distance between Bob and Bree and the buildings, over much closer. That was right at the edge of the toasted car lot. Who says, "Oh, here it comes. I'm getting under this car. I hope I live. It's coming down on me." And you don't hear any bangity song. And then he comes out and he says, "Well, there's people who need help," and he checks him. It's kind of funny. He checks himself, says, "And I'm not one of them." And then he goes to help somebody. He checked to make sure he wasn't needing help. And okay, then he's going to go help somebody.
Oh. Well, Dr. Judy, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the show. We've been 2 hours of discussion here, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure we could go on for another 2 hours, but things to do.
There's leaves to rake.
Yeah, leaves to rake and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's been really fascinating, and I love your passion and compassion in your work, because you really want to know what happened on that day. And I would advise anyone to take a really good look at your work, because it is absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much.
I collect the data and all the evidence for the reader to look at and make up their own mind, but it's conveniently located in one place.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating, and I would really encourage everyone to take a really good look at
where did the towers go. Yep.
And to watch any of your recent talks as well. The Lytham St Anne's one is an excellent one that Andrew put up. Fantastic. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and I hope you've been able to get a greater understanding of Dr. Judy's work.
This was a different process, and it needed a new name, so I called it dustification.
Yeah. It was.
I think it's intuitively, you know what that means.
It was like it was constantly breaking down. It was becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, and lighter and lighter.
And some of it actually went up.
Yeah.
How does that work? To the point that it blocked out all of the sunlight. It has to go up to. I've had detractors say, "Oh, she's say nonsense that it went up." Well, then how do you get it so dark you can't see your hand in front of your face?
Yeah.
Because there's no sunlight whatsoever. It has to go up to block out that sunlight.
And I think a lot of it did. I mean, you could see in some of the aerial pictures of a huge trail of material, very fine material that is just drifting out.
Right. It went up. It sort of looks like asparagus spears, kind of sticking up out of the top.
Yeah.
When it goes, but you could see it like even the folks in the space shuttle, or I mean, it's on the space station.
Yeah.
They looked down and they could see the dust, the trail of dust going down the eastern seaboard.
Yep. Yep.
Which was interesting. They saw that, but they didn't comment on other things they saw.
We'll come on to that later. Now, I just want to mention also, before we move on, that your PhD dissertation involved the development of an experimental method of measuring thermal stresses.
Thermal strains in deformation, but you can calculate the stresses from the strains. In bimaterial
interface using moire interferometry. There we go. I managed to get that out.
That was very good.
Thank you. And I believe that this work that you did for your PhD, it actually blew away all other theories that had come before that time about these biomaterial interfaces.
Well, up to that point, it contradicted and proved wrong every analytical model that was out there, because they had viewed it as a two-dimensional problem, and it must be viewed as a three-dimensional problem, and the experimental evidence that I produced showed that.
Bless you, Steve. Sorry about that.
and so so it went against all of the analytical models, but empirical evidence and experimental evidence is the truth that theory must mimic, not the other way around. So
all theory, the 2D theories that they'd come up with,
it showed that they were wrong.
Yeah.
And they were predicting what the stresses should be, and it didn't agree with the experiment.
Hello again, and welcome to the Detox. Thank you very much for joining me again this evening. Now, this evening we're kind of following on a little bit from last week's show, where I was talking about education and autism, and how through the life experiences of an amazing woman called Temple Grandin, and her insight, and through her insights that she brought to autism and education, we can see that every child would benefit from education that involves playing to their strengths and using that as a vehicle to expand on everything else. The autistic spectrum is so broad that I feel we all fit in some way, and I mean, who doesn't have some kind of a special or particular way of doing something? I don't know, maybe your garden, or cleaning your car, or making your bed, or folding your clothes. We all have, certain idiosyncrasies that we don't like it if someone touches our things in a certain way. It has to go like this, or maybe even not folding your clothes. Perhaps you lack the ability to keep your surroundings in any kind of order. So there are a myriad of ways of being that could be considered perhaps slightly autistic, but this is where our gifts or our strengths lie, I feel. I mean, people like David Beckham, I imagine most people know who David Beckham is, and I think we can all agree that he's not going to write a definitive book on mathematics, but he certainly knows how to play football, and he certainly has some amazing skills in that field. I don't know if any of you know or are aware of a woman called Sylvette David. She was she's still alive as far as I know. I think she lives around here actually, doesn't she? She's got a different name now, I believe. But she was an amazing artist, very talented young artist, but she lacked the ability to put herself forward in any way. And she became Picasso's muse and was known as the girl with the ponytail. But Picasso recognized her talent and helped her become brave and more forward in her work and her approach to her art and how to apply herself within the world. Now, the special interventions that are used to help kids, I feel, for autistic kids, I feel should be there for all children, because I think these are amazing ways to teach just generally. But the fact is that teachers are not really there to develop us. They don't have the time, and many of them don't even have the inclination to actually look at children as individuals, and how to expand the child and develop critical thinking. Teachers have lists.
14 people survived there, and 2 survived from even above where the building survived. But just the stairwell, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor, you had 14 people in there. So if it got to the basement, how did it take a detour around these people?
Yeah.
And because these people looked up and saw blue sky. They didn't have a pile of beams sitting on top of them.
Yeah. Yeah, they opened the door and it was spooky. They just walked.
Oh no, they just looked up after the dust cleared. They looked up and saw blue sky.
Bizarre. And also at something as weighty as this 110-story building, supposedly it smashed into the ground, but that would have breached the sides of the basement, wouldn't it? Which were, they call it the bathtub, but it's actually the basement of the building that's built into the bedrock.
Right. It's like a dike
that keep out the Hudson River.
Yeah, it's like a dike.
Yeah.
That's built around there, and you would have at least ruptured it somewhere, and you'd spring a leak, and it would have flooded all of the underground of southern Manhattan, all the subway tunnels, because they all connect in there. But let me read what one of the survivors of Stairwell B said. After the dust cleared, he said, I looked and said, guys, There used to be 106 floors above us, and now I'm seeing sunshine. There's nothing above us. That big building doesn't exist. And then he later said, these were the biggest office buildings in the world, and I didn't see one desk, one chair, one phone, nothing. That was Jay Jonas. But they looked up and saw blue sky. Mm. Now, how are you going to be, having beams getting into the basement? Mm. How do they get around these people?
Yeah. I mean, it is just unbelievable when you think about it, that all the lift shafts, the equipment, the part of the lifts, the desks, the filing cabinets, the computers, the toilets, the sinks within the toilets, everything. There was just, the particles that were left. They were smaller. They were smaller than blood.
Right. They're about some were as small as a 100th the size of red blood cells, which is the size of DNA. So how do you smash up something with a hammer and a rock? Mm. People say, well, that was the concrete. Well, how do you smash concrete to the size of DNA?
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Well, not just a small part of it, all of it. How did so much of it turn to the size of DNA particulates? That's just incredible.
I started out calling it pulverized, but then realized, that's when something grinds against something else and you end up with chunks.
Yeah.
This really stopped. Mm. And so what they were saying didn't make sense, so I tuned it out. So I didn't hear it. Mm. Because when my eyes and ears don't agree, I turn off my ears. And I look with my eyes because I believe what my eyes are bringing to me. It doesn't need, to go through somebody else's interpretation.
Mm. That's a really interesting observation. Because there were 110 floors in those buildings, which I believe were something like a quarter of a mile high. We don't have buildings that high in this country. We have some tall skyscrapers, and even just a building of maybe 20 stories. But when a building is demolished or something, they make an awful lot of clatter and bang, and they take a while to come down. And I can't imagine a building of that size. I don't think anyone really, unless you're really there, and then just the trauma of it would be blowing your mind, could actually perceive what that would do. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it, really? 110 floors in less than 8 seconds. 110 floors. It just blows my mind to say it.
Think how many times you can clap your hands in 8 seconds.
Well, I could barely do it 8 times or 10 times in 8 seconds. I certainly couldn't do it 110 times.
One of the mental exercises I did was mentally turn the building sideways, and it's a little over a quarter mile long, and then you get the world's record holder for the mile, approximately 4-minute mile. So if he's going to run at that pace, a quarter of that's going to be 1 minute, right?
Yeah. So
here he is running along the distance of that building. I turned the building sideways in my mind because people don't run vertically; they run horizontally. And so here he is, trying to outrun this destruction wave, but no way. In 8 seconds, but it'll take him an entire minute, 60 seconds, to run the length of that building.
Yeah.
At the world record pace.
Yeah.
So it's mind-boggling how that could happen, and how things can fail, because you need one thing to fail that would then allow something else to fail, which would allow something else to fail. It would be this kind of leapfrog activity. It wouldn't be 1, 2, 3, and all fall down.
Yeah. I mean, it was just disappearing in front of us, wasn't it?
To me, my very first gut instinct was like somebody pulled the end of a yarn off of a sweater, just unraveled.
Yeah. But at the end of it, you didn't even have a ball of
yarn
left. There was some rubble, but there was barely anything really. Certainly wasn't 110 stories. And we know that it didn't go into the basement, because you've shown evidence of people wandering around in the basement.
Oh, not only that, we have people in the stairwell
and boxes to tick, and they teach kids to jump through the hoops, and then they can tick the box and say they've succeeded and that the child has achieved. Is that education? Is that teaching? Is that teaching us to see the world with critical thinking and question accurately what's happening around us? I'm not so sure about that. So, as I discussed last week, there are many perspectives, and not everyone sees the world the way you do. Not everyone sees the world I do. And usually the people who have a slightly different take on the world are the ones who come up with the leaps in technology or development or in art or mathematics. Now, my guest this evening is someone who on September the 11th, 2001, saw something that others didn't see. She saw 2 buildings dissolving into dust. And my guest this evening is Dr. Judy Wood. Thank you very much, Dr. Judy, for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show.
Now, when you saw those buildings dissolving into dust, you were seeing something that most people weren't. Most people were watching the television and they were having a running commentary told to them, almost as if the story was being dictated, and the images were there just to confirm the story almost. But you had watched this in a different way. Perhaps you could just explain a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up, always having to do it my way, do things myself, and it had to make sense. I wasn't going to buy into anything anyone told me unless it made sense. And so when I approach problems, I tend to approach it by what do I see first, like in a school book. You look at the pictures, and then if the story doesn't make sense with the pictures, then you kind of wonder about it. Well, on the TV, you hear these buildings turning into dust and, frothing up into dust, and they said it was collapsing. Well, that's ridiculous. So I just tuned out what they were saying because what they were saying was nonsense. Like it was a soundtrack that went with some other story, not what I was seeing. And I even stopped and kind of looked away and looked out into space, and imagined what would a collapsing building look like. Nope, didn't look like that. And I even, I remember one of the images that went through my mind was of an avalanche. How a little bit starts moving, then it gets another part moving, it gets another part moving. It doesn't 1, 2, 3, and it all moves. That doesn't make sense. And that was another thing. You would expect it to be kind of a leapfrog, and then also once it's done, it will be settling down. Like this settles and that settles, and things are going to keep moving. It's not going to, move and then abruptly just instantly